we are taking this purpose and our American farmland back. American agriculture is not just about feeding our families, but about protecting our nation and standing up to foreign adversaries who are buying our farmland, stealing our research, and creating dangerous vulnerabilities in the very systems that sustain us.
U.S. lawmakers are working to ban sales of farmland nationwide to Chinese buyers. This as foreign persons, according to the USDA, had an interest in nearly 45 million acres of agricultural land as of the end of 2023. Chinese investors own slightly less than 1% across the nation. Joining us to discuss is Gordon Chang, author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. It is always great to see you, Gordon. To start, I want to pull up a map showing Chinese-owned farmland in relation to military bases. Secretary Rollins said in the new plan there will be a particular focus on these areas. You see it right here. Is there any precedent to take back this land linked to China?
Well, there may not be precedent, but I do believe that President Trump has the authority to do it. So, for instance, he has the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. We have seen courts restrict his authority under that act. So he could also invoke the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917. He might be loath to declare China an enemy, but in fact it is. They call us an enemy. And also he just has inherent powers to protect the United States. So I think that he does have the authority to do this. And this really is important because there is a clear and present danger.
How does that look when we look at feasibility, not only from a federal standpoint, but for getting states on board?
Well, a number of states have already enacted legislation in this regard, such as Texas and Florida, Montana, I believe. But clearly we need to have all 50 states on board on this. But we're starting to see more and more evidence of malign Chinese intent and activities. So I think it's becoming easier and easier. And by the way, there's a really important argument that is separate and apart from everything else. And that is no American can own a square inch of land in China. So why do we allow the Chinese to own square miles of land in our country?
That's such an interesting point. When we look at global competition, you mentioned some recent cases. How big of a threat is agro-terrorism as it relates to ownership of American farmland?
This, I think, is the most important threat. In June, there were 3 Chinese nationals charged with smuggling biological agents into the U.S. Now, the first 2 were charged with bringing in a fungus. That fungus causes blight that affects crops, such as wheat, barley, perhaps corn, but also livestock and humans. Now, some people may say, well, why would the Chinese researchers risk their careers to bring in something that's already here? And I think the answer is that what they were bringing in was genetically modified to make it more dangerous to agriculture and livestock. So we've got to have a look at what they actually were trying to smuggle in. And we also know that for at least a half decade, China has been trying to bring in invasive species into the United States. So that clearly is no good.
And clearly, tightening up farmland security is one part of this equation, as many experts have said. In an ex-post, you write, take back our land, take back our schools, take back our companies, take back everything, our country, from China's regime. And when I saw that, it kind of echoes what Secretary Rollins said in that soundbite that we played at the beginning of this interview in terms of taking back. But you did touch on several areas, some already happening. How do you see the U.S.'s strategy taking shape?
Well, I think what we're going to see is that although some of the things that I talk about would appear to be drastic today to many Americans, we are witnessing more and more malicious Chinese activities. So I think that it'll become politically acceptable in the future to take some of these drastic actions, because I think that some of the threats are imminent, and we've got to be really concerned and think about the urgency of what's going on. So I do believe that the United States, if we go back a couple of years ago, nobody was thinking of prohibiting Chinese from owning farm and ranch land. Now it is becoming not only acceptable, but there's momentum for it. I think in a couple more years, we're going to see even much more pressure to protect the United States from the communist regime.
Speaking of potential threats, there are reports of Chinese cargo flights near Iranians' airspace. What do you think is going on here? I mean, the loss of Iran is obviously a concern for China.
Yes, because China has backed Iran from the beginning of the October 7th assault on Israel. There are various reports. Some people say that those cargo planes never reached Iranian airspace. But the overall context, Didi, is that we know that Iran has large quantities of Chinese weapons. Also, Iran's own weapons have critical Chinese components, microchips. Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi militia all have large quantity of China's weapons. They got those obviously through Iran. So whatever the story is about these particular cargo planes, we know that in the past, there's been substantial shipments of weapons from China to Iran.
Yeah, we know that this security plan is largely focused on China, but we know that adversaries like Russia as well as Iran are included in that. So a comprehensive effort that we are watching closely. Gordon Chang, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the National News Desk.
Thank you, Didi.